This is a screenshot from the brand new Five Nights at Freddy's security breach. Now, what makes this really interesting is it features a character named Fetch. I'm gonna explain this in case you have no idea who Fetch is. You might, but in the interest of making sure everyone's on the same page here, I'm gonna explain who this is. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's is split into games and books. The books actually at this point outnumber the games. There's way more of them. There's the original novel series, and there's Fazbear Frights, and a bunch of other stuff in between. Now these have, until now, existed in separate areas of the series. The games are not canon to the books, and the books are not canon to the games. They exist in their own separate continuities. This has been stated many times, and yet there's been a few things recently that have really called this into question. The first is this screenshot, and the second is something I'd actually like to cover before that, which is the new Freddy Files. The Freddy Files, in case you don't know, or you're new to the series or something, is this big guidebook to the series up until now. It covers every game, it covers every book. It's basically, if you want to get into the series, it's a great way, actually. And it continues to get updated as the years go by, so, it's a good way to find resources on the series and learn about it. Now, in the most recent version of the Freddy Files, which came out this very month, the Ultimate Guide, it mentioned that a certain event that occurs in the Fazbear Frights book series, which, again, is said to be in a separate continuity from the games, or at least separate in some way, and it ties it back to an event from the games. Now, what I'm talking about is, in the book series, there's this mysterious fire that happened in the past. Now, William Afton, the main villain of both the books and the games, is said to have almost perished in this fire, but he managed to survive and is now back, in the series at least. The point is, this fire is said in the Freddy Files to directly connect to the fire from the games in FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator, where the exact same event happens. William Afton dies, at least that's what we thought. But now I'm starting to wonder if that's not necessarily the case. The Freddy Files has told us that these two events are connected in the chapter on Fazbear Frights, at least in some way, and at first I thought that was just, okay, they're two similar events, but that it isn't saying that they take place in the same continuity, or that they're canon to each other. But then we see this screenshot in Security Breach. Now this, to the average enjoyer of the games, or any new fans of the series, won't mean much. This is Fetch. He's one of the characters, one of the big villains from Fazbear Frights, and so far, only in Fazbear Frights, we thought. Fetch has never made an appearance in the games, until now. Now, there has been some overlap in the past over book characters actually coming to the games, game characters coming to the books, book characters going to other books, and, as I saw this, I began to wonder if maybe it is all interconnected. Maybe it does all take place in this same big story. And that's where this whole thing has led me. We've also had a character named Ella who shows up in the original book series, who also shows up in Fazbear Frights, and I wonder, does this mean Fazbear Frights is connected to the original book series? And all of this was really interesting to think about, and I'm still kind of wondering, but I want to make this video to clear up the fact that I don't think this is the case, actually. I want to clear up my opinions on the topic. There are, without a doubt, many contradictions between the books and the games. There are some between the games and the games themselves, but none that are so blaringly obvious, is that a phrase, as between the games and the books. You have events that just don't match up. Characters are named entirely different things between the books and the games. You have Andrew and Jake in the books, and you have Cassidy and Evan, seemingly, in the games for these two souls that are controlling one robot. You have... I could go into way more, but that's just the most obvious right now, the big one right now. I think that when I take a look at this, and I take a look at all these weird coincidences, like Fetch showing up in the games shortly after he appears in the books, and instead of thinking of it as, oh, this must mean that they're in the same continuity now, which I know I'm not the only one who's thinking this, I think that all this means is that there is some level of overlap, and we've had this before. In the books, there have been a device introduced called the illusion discs. Illusion discs, basically when they're activated, they offer a high-pitched tone that makes your brain tricked into thinking that the things you're seeing in front of you are something else. That's basically the watered-down description. Interestingly enough, these shortly later appeared in the game, and we've had things like this many times, and Scott has even, it's gone so far as Scott has himself commented on the situation. And he said, this probably is confusing, but the books influence the games influence the books. That doesn't mean that they're in the same story. It just means that they, elements from both will overlap, because they do take place in the same universe, with the same ideas, the same characters. They just tell different stories. And so as I was getting carried away wondering like, oh, is Fazbear Frights canon to these games? Are we going to see the Stitchwraith in these games? I had to remember that, and I had to remember that, no, that's probably not the case. This is just an element from the books, maybe a few, like that fire, that also are showing up in the games, and sure, it makes things a bit confusing, but that's just because these are similar events. It's not something that we need to look that far into, at least yet. If there's more evidence that these take place in the same universe, we'll have to take a look at it and maybe take a long, hard look at how we've kind of figured out the story of the series. But as it stands right now, it does look like these are separate stories like Scott's always intended. That can always change in the future. There can always be new books released that are actually canon to the games. That can always happen, and it's something that we should be looking out for. But right now, I don't think that that's what's going on. So I really just wanted to make this video to kind of clear up my thoughts on that as I kind of go through Security Breach and absorb all this information. That's really about it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.